Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation show, where we look at how choice creates and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that can actually work for you. So my name is Rebecca Boswell. I'm your host, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Maggie Emerson. Maggie is an adventurer at heart. She is a business enthusiast. She works with people all around the world as a coach and a facilitator. She is a body whisperer and all kinds of amazing other things. She defies labels. So instead of spending this entire episode on defining her and all of her brilliance and capacities, we'll just dive in. Today we have an amazing topic, out creating you. Maggie, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So Maggie, out creating you. Let's start just with it's funny. It's like, what is out creating? And I get actually the big question that's sort of sticking is like, what's the you part? Like, what am I? But let's start with out creating. Like, what is out creating you when you work with someone or you work in your groups and you're looking at this as a tool? Where do we start with this huge concept?
Yeah. So one of the things you can start looking at is we tend to think we have a destination, right? So we get there. But when we have a get there, we're always in judgment of ourselves. But when we go to the out creation, it's like looking at, okay, well, what else is there? What else is there? And we can look at every area of our life. Just say, the body is one area where there can be a lot of judgment. Mm-hmm. So what we eat, what we look like, and in out creation with our body is, what if you out created the joy of having a body? Like, how much fun could I have on this run today? And out create the fun of yesterday's run. Or if you're yoga, how much more can I discover in today's yoga class or this time on my yoga mat than I did yesterday?
So this sense of adventure that you have actually translates over into this adventure with your body, and also just this adventure of what am I choosing now and what would I like to choose next. Earlier in the week, we posted an article that you were featured in, and you brought your 2-year-old son on a biking trek through the mountains of New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So talk about out creating you. Like, how does one even get to a place of choosing something like that? And then, like, for some people who would look at that and be like, oh my gosh, I've never done anything like that. Like, how would you even out create? Like, where do you go from there?
From that?
Yeah.
Well, then we did a camper van tour in Europe for 3 months. We out created that.
Wow.
Right? But it's like, you just got it. Like, for me, it's the adventure of living and like, what is fun. And even like we just before we began, but I'm moving out of this place that I'm living in right now. And as an out creation of I know something else is available. And so when we look at out creation and you're asking about the cycle tour when my kiddo was 2, if we were being like linear, right? It would be like, oh, then we need to go on a longer cycle tour. And now my kid needs to bike with me or that, right? That's not necessarily out creation, right? It's that joy of living. Is this fun for me? And creating in that way, and knowing, like, the you is knowing who you are, but also knowing that you're ever changing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, this out creation piece, like what I see a lot when I look around and I even see there's the temptation every day in my world, right? When we look at out creating, sometimes there can be this kind of strange energy of competition or of, wanting to make it linear and make it about progress and about, so, I'm going to outcreate myself. And like you said, next time I'm going to go faster, or I'm going to go farther, or I'm going to make my kid do it, or right. Whatever it's from the outside, it's going to look like bigger, better, more, right. More wow factor. And what you're talking about here though, this out creating, it's almost like what you chose now. It's not even a reference point to what you choose in the future. It's just that you're choosing something that's even more expansive than you ever had access to before. Like everything that we create now creates a space and creates an energy. And then what you're talking about, it sounds like, is you're just kind of being open to the willingness of like almost being even more vulnerable with yourself and with the world about how much you're willing to show up and how much you're willing to choose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Very different than getting into comparison and competition and, progress reports. And, so can you talk though, maybe a little bit more about that for people for whom this may be a really different concept, right? If it's like, if we're really used to always bigger and better as a way of quantifying our value, and as a judgment, what you're talking about actually doesn't have any judgment to it.
Right. And so one of the questions you can start asking, and really allow yourself to know this, and it does take a level of vulnerability with yourself, and vulnerability in the sense of not like growing up, I was always the shy one. And growing up, I was this one, or, we were told I'm the youngest, I'm the baby, people take care of me. And if we continue to function from that point of view that others have projected on us, that others have told us, it's really difficult to outcreate. It's really difficult to know you in that deeper way. Yeah. And so I've done a lot of looking at that because when people meet me now, they're like, you were shy? I'm like, I was. I'm not anymore, right? And it's not a bad thing and it's not a good thing. It just was. And that's what I told myself all the time, right? And so with the outcreation piece is getting to know you and asking like, what would be fun for me? Because sometimes fun for me is cuddling up and watching a movie, right? And sometimes fun for me is going on a cycle tour. Sometimes fun for me is doing that. And so but coming back to the cycle tour, when I was doing a lot of writing about that recently, I started to plan a cycle tour that's why I brought that up, that my son would cycle along with me. And like, it was a really like, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and maybe we'll film it and it'll be great. Right. And then the thing is, it wouldn't come together. Nothing, like things weren't doing their thing. And I was like, okay, well, actually, what am I trying? Like, what's my agenda underneath this? I was trying to prove that I'm still that person. Well, of course I'm still me. What actually would be fun? How could I outcreate that in a way that does this, like has the smile and the joy versus the in my world? Yeah. Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm just getting the image of a butterfly, right? I mean, when the caterpillar turns into the butterfly, it's not a different thing. It's still the same life. It's just showing up in a different way and actually living very differently as a butterfly than as a caterpillar. So when the butterfly becomes the butterfly, it doesn't now mean that the caterpillar was wrong or that the caterpillar was maybe even better. It's just they're so different, and yet they're still the same being, really. And so when you're talking about outcreating you, it's kind of like there's this you that is the collection of your being. And then there's also the you that, morphs and shifts and changes. And, like I look at my life and there have been so many versions of Rebecca, even just in this one lifetime.
Today, maybe even.
And even today. Exactly. And yet it doesn't mean that any one of them is, better or worse or whatever. It's just they're just all different. And so we can keep choosing different without having to then go back into that comparison of whether this one is better than or worse than any of the previous versions.
And that like brings up too, it's like when we outcreate, there isn't a proving, right? Because sometimes there's a proving energy of like, it definitely was when I was planning this other cycle tour was proving. I may do a cycle tour in the future, but the way I was planning it was a proving, and that just wasn't working. Right. And then it's like too with business, it's like if you're going to prove or you're trying to judge yourself into something better,
yeah,
it's not going to be the greater that it could be if you're willing to be in the space of out-creation. And so out-creation is without a judgment.
yeah,
Because it's like, it's opening up. It's like we've often functioned like this with horse blinders on, right? And if we're going to like to, you know, we're wanting to do better, we want to run a faster time in our marathon, so to say, right? I've done a couple of those.
yeah.
And
You're
so
preaching to the choir, sister.
right? And so if we're like, okay, I can't eat this and I can't eat this and I can't drink alcohol. And all of a sudden you're pissed off about training for your running. What does that create in the rest of your life? Does it increase it or decrease the joy of living? Right? Out creation would be like, okay, I actually want to run faster in my next marathon. What could I choose? What could I be? Even like, what could my body show me? What can I eat that would allow me to run faster with a whole lot more ease and out create my last time?
Yeah.
And I tell you, it works. And you can drink if you like drinking, and you can eat donuts if you like donuts. You can have, like, you'll find out when you get out of the judgment, you'll find out that, oh, my body actually does like the vegetables and the hummus and the this, versus being like, oh God, I gotta eat another, like, this is my diet.
Yeah.
Right? It's like out creating yourself is really getting out of judgment and going, okay, like, what's the path of ease here?
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is it's not necessarily about the things you choose. It actually has to do with the energy mode that is underlying or supporting the way you're choosing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's not about the hummus and the carrots. It's about what you've decided about the hummus and the carrots and about, or everything else. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this getting out of judgment, what are some of your favorite tools that you've been using to get out of judgment?
Yeah. So interesting point of view. It's on like, it even like, so interesting point of view. I have this point of view for every thought, feeling, emotion, judgment that comes that I'm aware of, right? So sometimes we're doing that without knowing that we're aware of it, but really interesting point of view. I have this point of view, interesting point of view. I have this point of view, interesting point of view. I did this morning. I woke up, I didn't sleep very much. I pretty much packed my entire house in an evening and then went to bed with the point of view that I'm going to be tired in the morning. Guess what? I was tired this morning. And then I went, oh, if that's just an interesting point of view, what else is possible? In that moment of asking that, I out-created myself, right? Yeah. I out-created the tired and was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get, like, for some people listening to this, if they've never really played with this before, I can realize how that could seem really strange. Mm-hmm. And yet when I look at this, and you know, my analytical mind sometimes is like, wait, hold on a minute. What's going on here? And it wants to catch up to what I know and what, you know, what's available in that way. And the closest thing that I can see that helped my brain to kind of get this part was, you know, like when one of my children is upset, right? Especially when they were smaller, right? And that example of, like, your child falls down and starts bawling and, you know, you're calm and then you just are like, oh, would you like a lollipop? And they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, and instantaneous change. And that right in that moment was a choice where they were choosing the misery and the crying and the intensity from having fallen. And then in a split hair of a second, nanosecond, went right to, yes, of course, I'd love that. Thank you.
That's a brilliant way to explain it.
And everything else is just, it's gone. It doesn't even exist anymore, right? And it's just like that, where sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so heavy, or I'm so tired. And it's like, okay, well, as long as we keep buying that as real, we'll continue to create that for ourselves. And if we're willing to ask, okay, so is it even mine? Is there a point of view that I have here where in order to be right, I have to be tired? Like, or is there, like you said before, is there something else available? Is there something else that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting point of view. I will put in the show notes. There is a new group that has launched, and it does have a lot of access consciousness facilitators in it. Maggie is an access consciousness certified facilitator, as am I. And it's open to everyone and anyone. And we're playing with this exact tool over the course of the year. And so, yeah, what if every single thought, feeling, and emotion that we had, if we really were able to look at it as just one interesting point of view among an infinite number of points of view. And if it's working, cool, we can keep choosing it. And if it's not, okay, so if we have a buffet of an infinite number, what else would we like to choose? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So are there any other tools that you like to use for getting out of judgment? I mean, anybody that wants to even just play with that one,
that will change a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will change a lot. Because it's even when people are telling you stories, that tool, like when people are telling you something about you that you know isn't true, but you like use that in your head.
Yeah.
Don't say it to someone else. I learned the hard way.
Yes.
But it's that, and then really make the demand that the judgment of you stops. Yeah. No matter what it takes. If that means that you literally have to like put your hand in front of your face and think, stop, stop. And you're short circuiting that wiring that you've programmed in to judge yourself, because we're taught, unfortunately, we are taught that there's good and bad and right and wrong. And if you're not this way, then it's wrong. And we start judging ourselves if we don't match what someone says we're supposed to match. And so it's stopping that circuitry of what goes on and just, oh, stop, I'm judging myself. Cool. I'm going to stop that. And just like, those are the two that you could do those for 5 years, like forever, and that will continuously change your world.
Yeah. I mean, I personally see how things have changed, and and when I recognize, wow, how much has been able to change, and then how much faster things seem to be changing, it just, it leads me to wonder, so what else is possible now, and what is like, what out creating am I in, and are we all in that we're not even aware of yet? There was that piece, you and I had talked previously a little bit about time and about perceiving the future, and about, things that maybe have shown up all of a sudden, been super obvious, like, oh my gosh, this is such a big piece. Like, what would it take for us to play with this and to unlock all of the things that this, where we get stuck? You have your program that you're just completing, Unstick Your Stories. And, we take all these lies, we put them all in, and then we make that real. So when we perceive something from the future, and we attempt to choose it now, and it doesn't quite work, and then we like go to the conclusion of like, oh, well, that just doesn't work, and it gets thrown away, when really we're aware of it sooner than was the time. How does time play in this whole conversation around out-creation?
Well, really, you just want to let go of time, right? You just want to time is irrelevant in out-creation, in that it's moment by moment by moment. And like you were saying, you're not out-creating when your life feels like Groundhog Day. Yeah. For those of you who don't know Groundhog Day, it's a movie, and the same thing happens every single day. And this I get will contribute is like, I've been in this, it's a beautiful home. And if people, when I was mentioning to friends when they came visit, I'm like, I think I'm going to leave this place. And they're like, it's one of the best places you can rent in town. I'm like, I know, but it's time to go. And it's totally insane to other people to just be like, hey, can I get on my lease? They said yes. That's when we know we're in an energy of creation and out creation, when it's things start to line up as
ease and flow.
Right. And But for actually a couple months, I wasn't willing to see that. Like really a couple months, I really was in the, like, I have to be here, and I wasn't willing to outcreate this. And my life got smaller in some areas, and it wasn't fun. So if things aren't fun, or it seems like your world is shrinking, you might want to ask, what could I choose today that would outcreate this right away?
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know for some of you who are just like the whole question thing, right? It's like, what would it take? But we're not looking for an answer. And that's that's another piece to outcreation, because it's like, again, the linearity is like, oh, to outcreate the bike tour, I have to do another bike tour. It has to be better or bigger. It's not that. It's opening up to, and inviting in the awareness, the information, and receiving, well, what would it take to outcreate this? It might simply mean, like for my house, I started to rearrange the furniture, right, to shift the energy, and that didn't work, right? And it's like, okay, how can I outcreate? There was this stagnant energy in my world, and eventually I allowed myself to see, oh, right, I know it's time to go. And it's paying attention to those information, like, if you've ever had a gut feeling, or sometimes you just know and you don't know why you know, but you know, that's an indicator of like something, follow it, and that will grow your life dynamically.
So what are some of the tips and tools you use with your clients to help build that muscle of trusting not even trusting, but having the willingness to actually follow that whisper, or hear the whisper and then also choose to follow it?
So the way to build that muscle, one of the ways, there's no one way, but one of the ways is to actually recall when you knew before. Remember an experience of when you're like, you either knew something and you didn't choose it, and then what showed up was what you knew would show up if you didn't choose it. Mm-hmm. And you recall that. You don't make yourself wrong. You recall that, or you remember, oh, I knew that if I chose this, I would get here. And that it was so true. You start recalling that, and it'll allow you to see the energy of knowing. Mm-hmm. And then you can start grow that energy, build that muscle from remembering where you've already been and done that.
Yeah. So actually acknowledging.
Yeah, exactly.
Acknowledging what you have already created.
Yeah, in that way. Because it's not, we try and go, okay, where do I go? And yeah, you want to take action, right? You want to start this if this excites you, and you're like, okay, outcreation, I'm not really sure what it is, but I want to play with it, right? Yeah. And it's also, you already have this, it just has never been acknowledged in you before, or maybe it has and you're hearing it again in a different way this time. And so yeah, recalling those energies, recalling what we call awareness, and tuning into that more without making yourself wrong. Because some of the easiest ways to recall for me were where I knew and I didn't follow. Mm-hmm. Like I knew this, and I didn't. And it's fine. Now I'm just like, oh, right, cool. I knew, I know a lot now. Yeah. What would it be like? Again, another question, what would it be like to follow that? And then you start following it more and more, and you realize, oh, life doesn't have to be that hard after all. It can be quite fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where sometimes I'll ask, okay, so, I'll just ask for the energy of like, okay, so if I choose this, what does that create? If I choose this, what does that create? Right. And or indulge in, the possibility of this choice or this choice or this choice or another choice. And as I kind of go into the energy of it, I get a lot of information. It's like, oh, okay, well, really interesting what that can create. And is that actually congruent with what I'm asking for? Not actually. Okay, cool. Well, then if I didn't have to judge myself, like you invited already, then would I allow myself to choose again? And how about now? And how about now? So, so just start, you just mentioned just start. And yeah, we have, for all of you viewers here at the end, we do have a special offer for you, a freebie from Maggie, which is pretty awesome. And it happens to be called Just Start. So, so what is this Just Start? So we're talking about out-creating you, right? Just kind of starting the conversation about what can that even begin to look like for someone who's looking at this as a new way of, perceiving what's possible. And so, okay, so if someone's like, okay, well, I'm all right, I'm here. I've got all my stuff, you know, some of it I like, some of it not so much, but like, okay, I'm ready to just give this weird idea a shot and now create myself. Yeah. So, all right, just start. Well,
just start. Yeah.
What? Like,
I know.
What does that look like?
I know. I can hear the brain. Because so, like, how often you're like, oh, I'd like to do this, or, you know, we want to know where we're going before we get there, right? And it's sometimes we do. You know, if we're flying to Florida, we're flying to Florida, right? Creating our lives is not quite the same. If there's something far bigger than your mind can grasp, which is ideal for creation because it's way more fun if you let yourself. Yes. And it's bigger, or it's like, you gotta just start, because it's in the action that you take that gives you the more information you require to out create, right? And it's even in back to the same story of the bike tour, me taking action to put a new bike tour together gave me more information. It wasn't wrong that I went down that road, but it's like, oh, I'm trying to prove something here. Oh, I don't actually really, like, I don't want to go on a bike tour with my kid. He will whine the whole time, right? Yes. It was great when he didn't have to bike, but like, I'm not pulling a 60-pound kid, right? And it's like, just starting will give you more information, and it also give you the energy to turn up the dial of what you're wanting to create. And so in the Just Start, there's an audio that gets you into a fun energy of like starting. It's like, what can you choose? And there's a couple PDFs where you can, you know, oftentimes, especially like creative people, idea people, or just in general, we have so many things running through our heads. Yeah. And so one of the things is just simply a brain dump. Let it all out. And then you'll get to see and pick, okay, what's going to create the most today? Yeah. And sometimes, now this is the tricky part to have it like that, even I still have a tough time following, is sometimes just when you're playing with this 3 things a day that to work towards or whatnot is what is in there. Sometimes it's going for a hike. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's sitting down at your computer. Like for me as an online entrepreneur, it's like sometimes it's sitting down at my computer and writing an email. Sometimes it's going for coffee with friends. That in the magic of following that, like we talked about, following that knowing, is you will start to get that when you follow that, there are these elements that will show up. Like for today, I always look when I go to a coffee shop, I'm like, which one today? I'm not a regular at one coffee shop, right? And it's this really cool space that I go to of like, which one? And I'll go in, and almost every single time, either someone is there who is like, I just was thinking about you, or someone is there who I meet and they want to work with me, or someone is there who I've been meaning to connect with. And it's when we follow that, that's the out creation of when the pieces of our lives are no longer pieces. It's this seamless continuity of choosing to create. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I get that piece of like, what would I like to create? And then going, like, it's a question that seems so small. And if we're looking for an answer, it kind of goes dunk. But when we ask that question from just a space of like, okay, now, and what can I be aware of? And then allowing everything around you and everyone around you to actually contribute to what information is available around that question, right?
then yeah, you have, and then you start to play with the whispers and perceiving them, and then also, following that you do know when information is coming, and there's a possibility for making a right hand or a left turn, a right turn or a left turn. Yeah, and it seems to defy logic and not really fit into the sense of like how we should create.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I have to admit, I mean, the more that I play with this, the more that like the traditional ways of getting things done or achieving things, it just seems so like slow and
Mm-hmm.
and actually unrelated to the creation itself. Because if I'm like, I want to get to Florida and I have to drive, right? And then there's the possibility of taking a plane, but I have on those blinders that you talked about before, right? So I'm unable or willing to receive the plane. Now I'm in like the whole turmoil of the driving, whereas I could have just gotten there and already been on to the next adventure instead of drawing out this whole drive process for so long that actually doesn't even have anything to do with the adventure. It was just, like, there's still a linear element to my example, but it's that thing of like, if we decide how it has to show up, then we really can't receive from everything that's around us.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it too. And just as another example of when we just we decide how something has to happen. With me moving, I don't have to be out till the 1st. But I was like, okay, I don't have my kiddo this weekend. I'm going to pack. I'm going to take my time and pack this weekend. And all of a sudden last night there was an energy of pack. And I was like, but I have this to do and I have this to do and I need some sleep. And I went on I was like, wait, no. And pretty much my entire house is packed.
Yeah.
And it's like when we things can occur way faster, faster, right? And that someone can gift you their air miles for that plane ticket easily if you're willing to take off those blinders and be like, okay, what else is truly possible here?
Yeah. And that taking out that element of time again too, because it was the like everything was sort of aligned for you to pack, even though it didn't really make sense to you, right, last night. And so you did, in this like what should have been not enough time, you did all of this stuff. Whereas if you were unwilling to listen to like okay, go, right? And you're like, no, it's not the time. No, I have the time on the weekend. No, it's got to be like this. Like, it probably would have taken the whole weekend.
All weekend.
Right. And how much of that do we do when we're not paying attention to those, signals, signs, whispers, I mean, whatever you want to call them. Because like, how much was your body saying, hey, I'm in, let's do it now, right? Whereas if you're like, no, but.
Yeah, and so not to mention, here's the deal too.
It would have been resisting the whole time, and right?
Not to mention I packed, but I also went and posted like furniture on online garage sale, and made like people are coming to pick up the furniture today that I no longer want. Like I didn't just pack, I sold stuff, I made money. I totally outcreated my point of view that this weekend, okay, I'll get linear about it, and I'll, it was like I outcreated in the biggest way, because I was like, oh, I'll get to that, and I was like, I'll just start here. I think it was I'm like, I'll just post the shelf online, and then from there with moving one thing, so it's that action, right? Just start that action. Okay, I can start doing this, and I'll start to put like what I want for day to day here, and before I go, and in that was like a switch, like it's like game on. Yeah. And so when you're creating something, you're creating your life, or you have your job, or you have your kids, it's that just start. Yeah. Igniting that, like the lighter, right?
Yeah.
that allows everything, if you listen, if
Yeah.
you allow it to really just permeate and have a lot more fun. Because I would probably have been miserable this weekend trying to pack.
Yeah, right. And then it takes so much longer because then it's like every distraction you can possibly find to get, right? To not have to be present with this thing that you've now decided is such a chore, you don't want to do it. And, it becomes this, this struggle and then you have to do all this work to try and go against blah. I mean, how often do we do that in our lives? And instead of that one thing where it's like, you pull that one little thread and it's just like,
mm-hmm. And it's so much more fun. And if you're anything like me, it's really fun to resist it until you don't anymore.
So one tool that we can use when we find that we are in that place of resistance, like when you do get the hit of like, oh my gosh, this is what they were talking about. I'm definitely in resistance now. Wait, what did they say? What could I choose? What else is possible now?
So the greatest way to jump out of resistance is enjoy it. And just it's just okay. Because this is where I've been in this place of resistance for a while now with this house. Because I'm like, I shouldn't leave such, like, it is a cool place. Right. I finally was like, I'm just going to enjoy that. I'm going to acknowledge I love resisting. I love it. I do. It does something I love. It's like the one thing that I can do to make my life harder.
Awesome.
And so enjoy it, and which allows you to become in allowance of it. It's like, okay, I'm resisting it. And what I know about myself, and what you get to find out what you know about yourself, is I will resist it until I choose not to resist it. And as soon as I don't resist it, all the angst is gone.
Yeah. And of course, the irony there is that as soon as you're willing to resist it, you're in allowance, which means you're no longer resisting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just really, like, it's same with, like, if you're frustrated or you're, it's like you're bumping up against something, you can ask, what do I love about this? Yeah. And really, it's like, of course, the initial answer is often, I don't love any about it.
Yeah.
But if you take that vulnerability piece, like we talked about in the beginning, if you go to the vulnerability of what do I love about this?
Yeah.
Then you'll get to what's the subtext of how you're living your life that will allow you to see, oh, no wonder this isn't changing.
Yeah. Well, it's like those energy modes that we were talking about before. And lots of times those are things that, we don't really want to see, either because we don't want to judge them or we know that we will judge them, or we've decided what that would mean about us, or maybe it's like the one thing that we're trying to prove. We were talking about proving before that we're not, right? And we don't want anyone to know, including ourselves.
Yeah. And whereas oftentimes too with this is that, you want to find this out, discover this for yourself and invite it in. So that it's yours and you know it. But oftentimes we think it's like so hidden, but it's obvious to everybody else. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's not a bad thing. It's not a thing you need to hide, but it's like, okay, if I were willing to see this from a different perspective, what would I know about me? And what have I been hiding from myself to keep me in this, it's these uncomfortable, like the resistance is really comfortable for me. It's a very comfortable place to function. Mm-hmm. It's now I've hit a point of, okay, like I'm really, really good at that. And now it's time to truly outcreate it. Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, the stinky diaper is nice and warm in the beginning. So.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. It's so true. Yeah. It's like, it's nice and warm and
squishy and nice softy.
Oh, yeah. Right? A nice softy until it changes.
Until it changes.
Yeah. And so that's such a brilliant analogy.
I have an 8-year-old boy, so I feel like everything around here has to do in one way or another with poop. So here we go. Bringing it to you guys. You get the truth here at the Art of Creation show, all about poop. So Maggie, thank you so much for being here with us today. We did this whole arc, and there are so many areas where we do stop ourselves. Unfortunately, I'd like to say everyone else does that except for myself, because I've got it all figured out. Mm-hmm. And yet there are these places where we do stop ourselves, and now we have a bunch of tools to start recognizing, okay, so what is, right? Mm-hmm. And what else can I choose from here? Are there any other areas where where people tend to stop themselves that you want to just address here today, or are there any other specific tools for that you'd like to share?
The tools, like the interesting point of view, and to continuously choose, and really know that whether you believe it or not right now, there is nothing wrong with you.
What?
Right? There's nothing, like where you are today is a beautiful creation. And what if you didn't look to the past to create your future, and you just went, okay, I'm moving forward, and you can choose, and you can laugh at yourself and like, oh, I knew, it's like, what if no choice was wrong? It was simply a choice.
Yeah. And
did it create greater, or is there a different choice that you now would like to make?
Yeah. I mean, how many times, I know I've had this a lot, and how many people do you know, and how many times even for yourself have we had that sense that, choices are these really super hard, scary, serious things, and there's only ever one good choice, and you have to figure out which one it is, because God forbid you make the wrong choice and all the stuff that brings up, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, this invitation of, okay, so choice creates. So, okay, if we're willing to look at that, then are we willing to just keep choosing and keep looking at what's being created? And then the out creating also is sort of like, okay, cool. So this isn't working. And what else is possible?
Yeah. And
what is
that choice thing for newbies, yeah. Right? And for all of us, a choice can be like, it can be like, wait, choice. But yeah, it's like, what if you took today, whenever you're listening to this, or the rest of today, or the next hour, and really kind of chose, and then choose again and choose again. And Access, there's like the 10-second, like you have 10 seconds to live the rest of your life. What will you choose? And keep choosing. Like the both of us keep choosing to have this conversation. Eventually we'll choose to be done with the conversation, and then we'll choose something else. I will choose, like I have to pick up my kid today. I could choose not to, but what would that choice create? Right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, the choice to pick up my kiddo, that creates something. The choice to not pick them up, the choice to be late to pick them up. It's just a choice. Yeah. And when we, again, that stepping out of the wrongness of us, it's like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have chose to pick up the phone, and now I'm late to pick up my kid, which sometimes happens with me. He knows, he's like, you're late, Ma, by like a minute, right?
Because time doesn't exist.
It's time. It's like, oh shoot, like, and it's like, it's like, oh wait, that was 15 minutes ago. It's like, it doesn't matter. I no longer make myself wrong. And you know what? Actually, since I really made the demand to not make myself wrong for being late for my kid, even if it's like 2 minutes, I'm no longer late.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how that works? It is. So if that's any, like, if you're making yourself wrong for something and it keeps showing up, maybe you want to choose just even for 10 minutes to not make yourself wrong with it, and see what that creates for you and your body.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. You have really offered some super juicy, super awesome tools here. And I know that I'll be listening to this again and again, and everybody who's watching, I invite you to do the same. So Maggie, you have been amazing. I know you have a lot of Joy of Business 101 classes coming up. Those are available online, so people can choose that from anywhere around our planet, and maybe beyond. I don't know if they have a good satellite. So those are all listed on your website. Your website is Maggie hyphen, or no, dash. Is that the same thing?
Hyphen Emerson. Yeah.
Okay.
Dash. That little line thing.
That little thing. So Maggie-Emerson.com, and that will be in the show notes. So so that all of you watching can find her. You can also find her Adventure with Maggie on Instagram. So you can stay tuned to see what shows up. If maybe she'll be swimming across the Atlantic sometime soon, pulling a dinghy. You never know.
You never know.
Anything is possible. And then of course we do have the special Just Start offer. So there will be also a link to that so that you can play further with Maggie. And of course she does one-to-ones as well. So how did we all get so lucky? It's a pleasure to have you here today. Is there anything before we wrap else that you'd like to say?
Thank you so much for this show. It's been a joy to be on and a joy to watch the other episodes too with everyone else. So thank you for what you're creating in the world.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. I really appreciate that. It's been, wow, just such a gift. And you never know what's going to show up. So yeah, truly, how does it get any better than that? So to all of you who are watching, thank you again for coming, for playing with us. Please like the Art of Creation Show page on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Submit your comments, your questions. Let us know who you'd like to hear from, any questions and topics you'd like to discover more around. And we'll see you next week. Happy choosing. I wonder what we'll all play with next. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.